On the Chorus Radio Network tonight, and this is a topic that I read about in the Globe and Mail today. It's about veterans, and it's something I take it's very dear to my heart. Had a chance to talk to the previous Veterans Ombudsman, Pat Stogren, who is a strong advocate for veterans here in Canada. The current one is making waves as well, trying to stick up for veterans. His name is Guy Perron, and he's working hard to do things for people who have served our country. Men and women put their lives on the line, and I think they deserve our support. But some of that support may be waning. And to join us on the air to talk about cuts at Veterans Affairs and veterans themselves, how they're making out when they come back from places like Afghanistan, I'd like to welcome Michael Blaze, President and founder of Canadian Veterans Advocacy, to the show. Hi, Michael. How are you?
John, I'm great. Thanks for inviting me to speak to these issues tonight.
When I talk to people about this issue, they're extremely passionate about it, and you are as well, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you've got a background. You've served the country. Can you tell us a little bit about that, because it lends credence to what we're talking about here tonight?
Oh, yeah, sure. I served with the Royal Canadian Regiment. I served several years overseas in the Cold War, time at CFB Baden, and one tour to Cyprus, where I was injured, non-combat injury, was air evacuated to Canada, had a very serious operation. And, through that, I know what these young fellas are going through now, and I'm also a client of Veterans Affairs Canada. So on that level, I have a lot of experience as well.
So your group's called Canadian Veterans Advocacy. What is the state of affairs when it comes to veterans who return from service or have now retired from the service?
Well, the young fellas that have been accorded care through the new Veterans Charter since 2006, their state of care is, it's not up to the standard to those that served before. And, that's one of the reasons that the Canadian Veterans Advocacy was formed. As a matter of fact, you mentioned Pat Stogren. He was our mentor. I mean, when he stepped forth and courageously, and I mean this, courageously, stood forth before the nation and told the nation the truth about Veterans Affairs Canada, and then, of course, suffered the consequences for it, right?
Yes, he did. I spoke to him about how he was almost getting a bum's rush out of the position because he could have stayed on for another year, but it looked like he was being shown the door at the time.
We were very disappointed as a veterans community because, we believed Mr. Harper when he said, I understand there's problems at Veterans Affairs, and, I've selected Colonel Patrick Stogren, a hero in many Canadian servicemen and veterans' eyes, to lead this. And then when the good colonel does his job and he does expose the severe and grotesque shortcomings within Veterans Affairs Canada, what did they do? They violated his privacy, for God's sake, used the information in his medical files against him, and subsequently, released him without no credit whatsoever for the outstanding job that he had done.
I think you've got somebody who's making a few waves now, Mr. Perron, who's a new ombudsman. He's making waves as well. He's concerned with disability claims right now, so it looks like you've got another good advocate there for you.
Well, I've met Guy several times, and I can say, there's a different style there. There's no doubt. But unfortunately, the end result's the same, John. I mean, since Guy Perron has come into office, he has, this is not the first report that he's released. He's come out against this abhorrent lump sum award, that they provide to these poor guys, the armless, the legless, the blind, insane. He's come out against that, yet the government's ignored it. He's come out against these budget cuts that are coming up. He's defying the consequences that will happen to our veterans, yet the government has ignored it.
Michael, I'm just wondering, can I jump in here? Because you said earlier that things have changed from 2006 on. The ones prior to that are doing better, is that right?
Well, prior to that, this nation fulfilled its sacred obligation to those they send to war by providing a lifetime, John, a lifetime pension. In 2006, in one of these wonderful deals to save money, they changed the rules of the game. Worse, they changed the rules of the game when our young men and women were engaged in combat in Afghanistan for the first time since Korea at that level. And now we have this. I'll give you a quick example because, we have two veterans, two sergeants, right? One prior to 2006, one post-2006. Both are married, both have a couple of kids. Sergeant 1 prior to 2006, he will be cared for life. He'll probably make $2 million just alone off that Veterans Affairs Canada should he live to the age of 85, you know? I mean, his wife will be taken care of. Should he die before, she will get half his pension. He gets compensation for his children to ensure that they have a vibrant life as they grow up, even though their father or mother might be severely disabled. And yet the new Veterans Charter comes out with this pitiful, and I mean pitiful, lump sum award that does not even measure up to what some fellow on the work site in a carefully controlled and ultra-safe, you know, accidents happen, he would get probably $50,000 to $80,000 more than one of Canada's sons and daughters who volunteered to serve this nation, who was sent in harm's way, and now is being abandoned to this $288,000 payment. And you know, I mean, and they'll say, oh, we've got other programs, but they all end at age 65. They're still disabled. They're not going to grow legs at age 65 or arms. They need Canada's help. And it's time for Canadians to step up.
I want to talk. We'll talk a little bit in a moment about cutbacks at Veterans Affairs, and it looks like it's going to be. Well, they're asking for 5 to 10% cuts across the board at all federal departments right now. And from what I've been reading about this, it could be even more at Veterans Affairs. But wouldn't you think this is one of those issues where you could have bipartisan support? I mean, there might be a few people who don't want to pay this money, but these are people who put themselves on the line, and that's the thing that's surprising, particularly from a party that sees itself as the party that supports the military. Does that surprise you?
It disgusts me.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I mean, no, I bled blue at one time in my life, you know. I mean, I sit here as a former conservative saying, my God, what happened to our party? You know, I mean, there was a time when the Conservative Party stood up for our veterans. They stood up for our troops. It wasn't lip service. It was reality. And now all we're getting is this drivel about, oh, we're cutting red tape. Well, you know as well as I, John, that when they say governments and politicians say they're cutting red tape, all they're doing is cutting jobs and cutting services. And to apply this to our veterans, you know, over 4,000 who are currently clients of Veterans Affairs Canada who served in Afghanistan is irreprehensible. You know, we are facing a serious problem in this nation. We have thousands of veterans in need, and our government is refusing to take the steps to implement the measures to ensure that these kids, our kids who served in our name, and their families, and their mothers and fathers, and that they're taken care with the dignity and respect for life, John, for life. Instead of, you know, they've abandoned them to this lump sum award, and at age 65, it's thank you for your service, have a great day, good luck.
Well, I'm going to take a quick break. We'll come back in just a moment. We'll talk a little bit about some of those veterans. I've had a chance in the past to talk with groups. A lot of them they find themselves homeless, and they've got nothing. So we can talk a little bit about that. And these cuts, because there's a significant amount of people that will be gone from Veterans Affairs if the Conservatives cut back the way they say they are. And it's a lot of money here as well. So we'll talk more about that in just a moment. With Michael Blaze, President and founder of Canadian Veterans Advocacy, there's a chance of some major cutbacks at Veterans Affairs. And we talked through the first segment about veterans and how they might be getting, or how they are getting shortchanged by the government when they return from places. They've lost arms, they've lost legs. And Mike, I'm just wondering, do you have personal experience with some of these people? What's the state of the average veteran that comes back from a place like Afghanistan right now?
Well, you know, it depends on the debilitation that they have. You know, I mean, guys that are suffering from operational stress injuries, many you wouldn't know they're hurting, John. They're very good at holding it within, you know. And then there's others that are very vulnerable, very weak, in the sense that they need help and are reaching out for help, and oftentimes due to their location in Canada, where Veterans Affairs Canada doesn't really have help, you know, there's serious issues here that require more money to fix, not less money. You know, we always get back to the budget now because, as we all know, money makes the system work. And, you know, they've done this departmental review where they said, oh, we're going to cut $226 million because our World War II veterans are passing away. But they're ignoring the fact that, as I read the other day in the Globe and Mail, that there have been 30,000 additional veterans coming on to Veterans Affairs roles in the last decade. Now, this is indicative of a groundswell of modern veterans coming forth. And for good reason, because, we speak of Afghanistan a lot, but, we neglect to speak about Rwanda. We neglect to speak about Somalia. We neglect to speak about former Yugoslavia, where our kids seen terrible things relating to genocide and hatred that we as Canadians never experienced. And now we're facing this thing where, the Veterans Affairs Union has come out. I sat with them today. We have case managers that have 900 to 1,200 files on their desk. Imagine that. 1,200 clients this woman has to take care of, right? We have issues where veterans are dying. My God, they're dying before they get the benefits that they're entitled to. There's backlogs of up to 8 months. These kids are hurting.
Yeah, and actually...
You can't wait 8 months. You got to act now.
Yeah, and Mr. Perron, who's the new Veterans Ombudsman, is kind of concerned about the way some of these claims are being handled. You say that it's just a backlog, and it's impossible to deal with this, right?
We're not talking claims. We're talking people who have already successfully passed the claim process.
Right, yeah.
And are entitled to bloody benefits.
Right.
And when we get the claims, I see Minister Blaney talking about red tape yesterday, and bang, 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 that's the way it's going to go. But in my mind, I see them going, deny, deny, deny. All that's happened here is they've cut red tape to make it easier for Veterans Affairs Canada to deny veterans what they're entitled to.
There's talk that there's as many as 500 people that could be gone, and obviously if you're saying there's this much backlog right now, that's just going to make things worse, right?
Well, worse. It's we talk about the 500 on the front line, but no one's mentioning the 1,300 people, that St. Anne's de Bellevue Hospital that are taking care of 400 men and women that are between 80 and 90 valiant Canadians who fought in World War II, who fought in Korea, who now are being subject to a transfer to the province of Quebec with no safeguards whatsoever to ensure that their treatment and care is at the same level, which is extraordinary, a 93.4% rating, that Veterans Affairs Canada has established and created and provided for these veterans for many years. And now we have them, my God, they're in their 80s and 90s, they're vulnerable, there's certainly no position for the massive changes, that what's our government doing it for? To save money. I mean, we're putting our veterans from World War II to Afghanistan today, their services, their compassion, the care and the dignity they deserve, we're forfeiting it all just to pay off the national debt. This is ridiculous. What happened to this nation?
I'm wondering what can Canadians do? Because again, this I know people who have served. I'm wondering what Canadians can do to support
you. You have to get active, John. You have to join. The Canadian Veterans Advocacy is the only veterans organization that is engaging politically at this level, and we need your help because changes can only come at the legislative level. We have to approach Mr. Harper. We have to approach Minister Blaney. We have to approach every conservative that's currently in the House of Commons that professes to care for veterans and tell them it's time to start walking the walk. Exclude the budget from these austerity programs. Enact the resolutions that the stakeholders presented just 2 weeks ago. I mean, for the first time in many years, the veterans organizations, the stakeholders, the Canadian Veterans Advocacy, the Royal Canadian Legion, all of the groups are united under one banner. And that banner was reflected by 3 resolutions that were passed at the last meeting with full consensus and full unity. But it's going to cost money to implement these measures because our veterans are very, very sick. Many of them have very expensive treatment things. And if we're going to step up, if we're going to make sure that these veterans have this quality of life for life, it's going to cost money. And Mr. Harper, it's time to step up. It's time to say, I am a Canadian. I do love my veterans, and I will exclude this budget for Veterans Affairs Canada from any deficit reduction plans until we have implemented these resolutions, until the recommendations that the Veterans Ombudsman has put forward are implemented, and until this abomination called the Veterans Review and Appeal billboard has been abolished and replaced with something where veterans will have justice. Not what's happening today.
Michael, you're actually talking to his constituents here in the Calgary area tonight as well, so they're hearing what you're saying. How can people find out more about your group? Do you have a website for Canadian Veterans Advocacy? What is that?
CanadianVeteransAdvocacy.com. We're all over the place. We're on Facebook. We use the internet medium to reach out to Canadians, to motivate them to step up. And for those of you that are listening to me today, please call your MP, email your MP. Just say, listen, it's time. Veterans need our help. It's not time for budget cuts. It's time for compassion, love, understanding, and patriotic commitment to those who have served and suffered in our name.
Michael, we'll leave it at that. Great way to end this. First of all, thank you for your service over the years. Appreciate that very, very much. And thanks for chatting with me tonight.
God bless you, John. Anytime.
And there's a passionate person, I'll tell you. And, it's one of those things you can have an effect on what happens with veterans. So thanks very much to Michael for being on the air with us tonight. Now, we're coming up on News Shield. We'll be in just a moment with that. But coming up a little bit, you have to wonder if, what happens with governments is I think they run out of time. Their best before date comes due. And I'm not sure that the Conservatives are at that point as of yet, but they've not had a good week. Let's face it.